But the best story of the relations we have to people who don't think the same as us is the great old story, one of my favorites, of the old man and the violin. Now, this is a story in some far-off country of an old man. Oh, actually, he was young when the story started. And he lived up in the mountains, a simple farmer. And like many parents do, he worked so hard. And the meaning of his life was bringing up his children, making sure they got a good education, and at great extra cost to himself, working really hard to send his kids to university. And his kids, they passed their examinations, they became doctors, they became engineers, they became sort of business people. And once they got themselves established in the city, they decided to invite their father up from the mountains and the poor villages where he'd worked all his life, invite the father to the city for the very, very first time. And when they invited the father to the city for the first time, the father saw things he never ever expected to see before. I'm going to go off a tangent here because it's time for a joke. He went in to a supermarket in the mall, and he couldn't believe he saw there milk powder. Just add water and you get fresh milk. He thought, wow, this is amazing. Up in the village where I live, you have to find a cow and you have to pull the udders to get milk. Here, all you need to do is get this powder and add water. This is amazing. And then, in another aisle in the supermarket, instant mashed potatoes. Just add water, mashed potato powder, just add water and you get potatoes. He said, up in the mountains, we have to dig the soil, put in these seed potatoes, wait for a while, and then we have to harvest them, and then we get the potato, we have to wash it and peel it and boil it, and then we mash it, and then we get mashed potatoes. Here in the city, you just get powder and add hot water, and you get instant mashed potatoes. It's amazing. And then when he went into another aisle, he couldn't believe his eyes. Baby powder. Up in the village, we have to have a woman. Okay, you get the joke. So anyway. I won't go to the other. Oh, okay, the other joke. Here we go. Some of you may have seen this, heard this one before. And he went into sort of the supermarket, and he saw this incredible thing. They had these two doors, and they opened up. You know, it was an elevator, lift. He hadn't seen one before. You don't have elevators in the village. So he saw this old lady go in the elevator, and the doors closed, and he saw these numbers appear on the top. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and it stopped. And then he saw 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then the elevator doors opened, and he saw this young secretary walk out. He saw this old woman walk in, a young woman walk out. So he said to his son, "Can you bring your mother over here?" That's a guy's joke, okay? Anyway, sorry about this. Anyway, so serious part of the story. He heard a terrible sound while he was exploring the city. The worst sound he'd ever heard in his life. It was a terrible noise, but he was always inquisitive. So he insisted on finding where this really awful noise came from. So he followed the sound into the room in the back of a house where he saw this young boy, maybe about 5 or 6 years of old, playing a violin. Now, being a simple man with no education, he thought that's what a violin sounds like, and he never wanted to hear such a terrible instrument again in his life. The next day, a different part of the city, he heard a beautiful sound. He followed that to its source, and I think you've already run ahead of me. What he saw was an old woman, maybe 60 or 70, playing a violin. It was so sweet, it made him tremble with joy. She was a maestra. She'd been practicing all her life on the violin. And now he realized it wasn't the violin's fault. It was just the boy had yet to learn how to play it sweetly. And he thought that's the same when we criticize religions in our modern world. It's nothing to do with the religion. It's the person hasn't learned how to play it properly yet. But the next part of the story is the best. In another part of the city, he heard the most beautiful sound he'd ever heard in his life. It was more thrilling than the sound of the creek up in the mountains after a heavy rain. It was more soothing than the sound of the wind ruffling the leaves in the forest. And more beautiful than the sound of the birds in the early morning. It was the most beautiful sound he'd ever heard in his life. You know what that sound was? An orchestra. It was the most beautiful sound for two reasons. First, every member of that orchestra was a maestro of their own instrument. They had learned how to play their instrument so sweetly, first of all. And then secondly, and most importantly, then they learned how to play together in harmony. That's why he said it was the most beautiful sound in the world. And he said, wouldn't it be wonderful with all the religions in the world? First, you learn to play your religion sweetly first. But don't stop there. Then learn how to play with other religions in harmony. What a beautiful sound that will be in our world. Now that's what the relationship we have to religions is all about. And what a beautiful world that would be. And how we do learn from one another.